What if the legendary allure of Las Vegas has been systematically dismantled, replaced by a force far more cynical, unadulterated corporate greed? The city once celebrated as a haven of affordable buffets, complimentary drinks, and boundless entertainment now feels like an elaborate snare, where every single cup of coffee, every hotel room, and every slice of pizza carries a venomous, hidden price. And it was during one stunning on-air interview that the CEO of MGM Resorts almost exposed the entire charade. He was on the verge of uttering the one word that could bring the whole house of cards crashing down: greedy. Don't go anywhere, because we are about to pull back the curtain on the price gouging scheme that Las Vegas desperately wants to keep buried. This is the smoking gun, the moment the CEO nearly confessed his company's avarice on CNBC. Imagine the scene: a brightly lit CNBC studio, cameras broadcasting live, and at the center of it all, Bill Hornbuckle, the chief executive of MGM Resorts International, fielding questions about Las Vegas with polished confidence. And then, it happened. Before an audience of millions, he faltered, tripping over his own words while defending a $12 Starbucks coffee at the supposedly budget-friendly Excalibur hotel. It was a momentary lapse, but his tongue slipped just enough to betray the unspoken truth. He came breathtakingly close to admitting it. We got greedy. That one single word was on the precipice of escaping, and had it done so, it would have dominated headlines on every business journal in the nation. But why does this fleeting moment carry such immense weight? Because this was never just about an overpriced cup of coffee. It's about the powerful symbolism behind that coffee. It represents the complete metamorphosis of Las Vegas, from a destination where ordinary people could experience a taste of royalty to an exclusive playground for a clientele conditioned to accept exorbitant prices without a second thought. For decades, the very soul of the city was its incredible value. Think of the $5 steak dinners, the $9.99 buffets, the $1 margaritas. Las Vegas thrived on a promise of affordable thrills paired with world-class entertainment. Hornbuckle's near confession was the first visible crack in that carefully constructed facade. A rare, unguarded moment where a top executive nearly conceded that this entire tradition has been sacrificed at the altar of raw, unapologetic profit. But what unfolded next was perhaps even more revealing. The interviewer intervened with surgical precision, cutting him off before the word greedy could fully escape. This was no mere coincidence. What you witnessed was a textbook case of media damage control. A CEO articulating the quiet part out loud on live television would trigger seismic shock waves through the stock market and deeply unsettle investors. It would ignite a firestorm of public outrage. Just imagine the fallout. MGM stock value plummeting, politicians clamoring for answers, and tourists everywhere suddenly questioning if they've been systematically duped. But instead, the moment was deftly buried beneath a veneer of polite conversation, the narrative expertly redirected toward corporate jargon like value creation and long-term strategy. Yet, for the viewers who caught that critical hesitation, the message was crystal clear. They witnessed a flicker of raw honesty in a city built entirely on illusion. This, right here, was the smoking gun. It was definitive proof that behind the dazzling neon and slick marketing campaigns, the executives know precisely what they are doing. They have consciously traded customer loyalty and fairness for short-term revenue gains and record-breaking profits. And if a CEO came that close to admitting it once, it forces you to wonder, how many other uncomfortable truths are being deliberately kept under wraps? So if one slip of the tongue can reveal so much, what else are they concealing about the tangible decline of Las Vegas? It's time to dig deeper into the hard data and the stark reality on the Strip. The Great Visitation Meltdown. Take a walk down the Strip on a Friday night in 2025, and you'll be struck by something deeply unsettling: eerily empty sidewalks. hushed casinos, and taxi lines that move with an unnatural speed. This is not the vibrant Las Vegas of memory, and the official data confirms exactly what your eyes are telling you. Visitor numbers plummeted by more than 7% in the first half of 2025 compared to the exact same period just 1 year prior. In the months of June and July alone, the city experienced devastating double-digit drops, an 11% and a 12% decline respectively, that carved a massive hole in the critical summer tourist season. For a metropolis that lives and dies by the flow of foot traffic, those figures are nothing short of alarming. And yet, during that same CNBC interview, CEO Bill Hornbuckle attempted to dismiss these statistics with a masterfully selected, misleading example. "We ran 98% occupancy this past weekend." It sounds impressive until you perform the most basic critical analysis and realize he was referring to a major holiday weekend, a time when rooms would naturally be at peak capacity. That's the equivalent of a restaurant owner boasting about being full on Thanksgiving Day. It's a convenient soundbite, but it is in no way representative of the overall trend. By fixating on a single outlier, he masterfully sidestepped the larger, more damning truth. The undeniable reality is that month after month, Las Vegas has been hemorrhaging visitors. January, February, March, April, every single one posted a decline. The overarching narrative is unmistakable. The crowds are vanishing. The central question is, why? The primary culprit is the astronomical cost of a visit. Consider the resort fees that inflate a $45 room at the Excalibur to a staggering $90. Parking fees that materialize out of thin air, and food courts where a family of 4 can now burn through over $100 for simple burgers and fries. The foundational promise of affordable indulgence has utterly disintegrated, a reality tourists now confront with every single transaction. Add to this the crippling cost of airfare and relentless inflation, and a damning perception solidifies. Vegas no longer offers value. As a result, travelers are actively choosing alternatives: Laughlin, Reno, or the simple act of staying home. The economic shockwaves are immediate. Fewer visitors means a devastating blow to taxi drivers, small restaurants, and off-strip hotels that have no global conventions or celebrity residencies to absorb the impact. Service workers, already crushed by soaring housing costs and stagnant wages, now watch their hours mercilessly cut. Investors, however, are fed an entirely different, meticulously polished narrative. Record revenues from luxury resorts and booming overseas markets. But if you want the unvarnished truth, ask a cocktail waitress on the Strip. She will reveal a world where tips have vanished, tables sit hauntingly empty, and the very spirit of Vegas feels broken. This is the great contradiction. On paper, corporate profits have never been higher. On the ground, locals are caught in an economic vice, while the tourists, the city's lifeblood, are quietly staging an exodus. If this decline in visitation persists, no glossy marketing campaign can hide the rot. Which exposes the next, even more uncomfortable truth. The crisis isn't just about the number of visitors. It's about what is being extracted from them the moment they arrive. The $12 coffee and the architecture of price gouging. Imagine this: you enter the Excalibur, a property built on the very idea of value. To start your day with a simple coffee, you offer your card and the cashier announces the total. That will be $12 for a basic Starbucks coffee. No rare bean, no celebrity barista, just a coffee that costs less than half that price just a few blocks away. This single predatory transaction has become the ultimate symbol of what is fundamentally wrong with Las Vegas today. It is the poster child for a price gouging playbook that now governs everything from the cost of a room to a bottle of water. In a stunning moment of clarity, CEO Bill Hornbuckle himself cited this very example, all but confessing that perhaps the corporation had become consumed by greed. Consider the weight of that admission. A CEO publicly conceding that charging $12 for coffee at a budget hotel might be indefensible. And yet, instead of a reversal, the playbook was only intensified. A room advertised at $45 balloons to nearly $90 after the non-negotiable resort fees and taxes are factored in. A fast food combo that costs $8 back home suddenly becomes an $18 expense in a casino. Even a bottle of water from a vending machine can now set you back $7. This is no longer about luxury. This is about a systematic, predatory strategy to nickel and dime every guest at every possible opportunity. And the reason this matters? Because value was the very soul of this city. People came here not just for the spectacle, but for the distinct feeling they were getting a deal. The pain of gambling losses was always softened by cheap food and generous perks. That psychological bargain is what kept tourists returning for decades. Now that sacred balance has been shattered. When guests feel they've been fleeced before even reaching the casino floor, resentment takes root. And a resentful customer does not gamble. The fallout is undeniable. Middle-class families, once the backbone of Vegas tourism, are now being systematically priced out. Convention attendees openly revolt against being overcharged for coffee and snacks. Locals now avoid the Strip as if it were toxic, and while corporate earnings reports boast of record revenue per room, the catastrophic long-term risk is the alienation of the very customers who built this city. Vegas cannot survive on high rollers and whales alone. It requires mass volume. And that volume is dependent on everyday people feeling welcome, not like targets. So the $12 coffee is not just an absurdity, it is a perfect case study of how short-term greed is systematically destroying long-term loyalty. And it begs a terrifying question. If this is the standard at a budget hotel, what does that reveal about the business model of the entire Las Vegas Strip? The answer lies in the vanishing promise, the disappearing value that once was the very definition of Las Vegas. Close your eyes and conjure the image of Las Vegas in its prime. The symphony of buzzing neon, the ceaseless energy of the casino floors, and the ubiquitous buffets promising all-you-can-eat feasts for $9.99. Visitors were not drawn here merely by the chance to get rich. They came because Vegas offered something that had become rare in the world: a world-class escape at an everyman's price. It was the one place where a truck driver, a school teacher, or a young couple on a strict budget could, for one weekend, feel like royalty. That was the value proposition Las Vegas sold to the world, and on that foundation, an empire was built. But that was then. In today's Las Vegas, a different reality has taken hold. The once ubiquitous cheap buffets are now a ghost of the past, supplanted by celebrity-helmed restaurants where a meal for two carries the weight of a monthly mortgage. Those legendary steak and egg specials? A distant memory. Even the humble food courts, once a sanctuary for families seeking refuge from exorbitant prices, have been transformed. Now, they command $25 a head for what amounts to little more than pizza and a soda. The city that built its empire on the promise of affordable abundance has become a machine where every single bite feels like a calculated transaction, engineered to extract every last cent from your pocket. In a moment of corporate damage control, MGM CEO Bill Hornbuckle attempted to pacify a concerned public. During his CNBC appearance, he pointed to phantom $33 course meals and mythical $5 beers as proof of Vegas's enduring value. But for anyone who has set foot on the Strip lately, those figures sound like they're from a different decade, or perhaps a different dimension. The carefully crafted narrative of affordability has disintegrated, slipping through the city's grasp like sand. In its place, a tide of frustration and disbelief rises from tourists who arrived expecting a promise that was broken. And when the promise is severed from reality, the very foundation of trust begins to fracture. Herein lies the devastating irony. In their relentless pursuit of immediate profit, the casino giants are methodically sawing off the very limb that supports them. The success of Las Vegas was never just about the siren call of a jackpot or the bustle of a convention. It was forged in the perception of unparalleled value. It was families meticulously planning trips confident they could dine like kings without emptying their savings. It was tourists rationalizing their losses at the tables because the room, the drinks, and the meals felt like an incredible steal. Strip away that fundamental principle, and what remains? Just another overpriced metropolis, now forced to compete with Miami, Los Angeles, or New York, but conspicuously lacking their beaches or their deep cultural cachet. And this seismic shift carries profound consequences. Middle America, the very bedrock of Vegas tourism for generations, is now quietly voting with its feet, staying home or discovering other destinations. Locals now gaze upon a strip that feels alien, a place that no longer belongs to them. And the city's global beacon, its reputation as an accessible playground for all, is dimming with alarming speed. All of this culminates in a monumental question. If Las Vegas completely abandons its core principle of value, what does it evolve into? The answer, as always, is found by following the money. To truly grasp the tectonic plates shifting beneath Las Vegas, one must trace the flow of capital. In that same CNBC interview, Bill Hornbuckle made a stunningly candid admission. MGM Resorts' record-breaking profits were not being driven by the average American tourist on the Strip. Instead, he credited a new holy trinity of revenue streams: Macau, the explosion in digital gaming, and a strategy of regional diversification. The translation is brutally clear. The corporation's destiny is no longer tethered to your family's weekend escape to Vegas. It is now inextricably linked to foreign markets and the ultra-wealthy gamblers overseas. This explains the paradox of why, even as domestic visitor numbers decline, MGM's revenue per room is soaring to historic heights. The company has calculated that it no longer needs the school teacher from Ohio or the bachelor party from Toronto. Those are the guests who balk at $12 coffees and watch in disbelief as a $45 room inflates to $90 with hidden fees. But in the opulent markets of Macau or Saudi Arabia, markets MGM now openly pursues, the true high rollers don't even flinch at $1,000 dinners or $50,000 gambling sessions. Viewed through the detached lens of corporate calculus, the logic becomes chillingly simple. Why expend resources catering to the middle class when a single overseas whale can generate the same revenue in a single decadent night? This new doctrine perfectly explains Hornbuckle's revealing slip of the tongue, where he acknowledged a need to be more value-sensitive before immediately pivoting to international expansion. For those who call Vegas home, the implication is bone-chilling. The city, whose very lifeblood was once volume dash. Millions of ordinary people filling thousands of hotel rooms, lining up for buffets, and enjoying $5 blackjack is simply no longer the primary focus. The Las Vegas Strip has been repurposed. It's no longer a playground for the people, it is now a polished showroom for international investors. The irony is so sharp it could cut glass, a city built by embracing the masses. By extending an invitation of glamour at an accessible price, is now systematically pricing out the very people who built its legend, coldly dismissing them as the lower end of the market. By fixating on these overseas fortunes, the executives are delivering an unspoken but deafening message to their domestic audience. We no longer need you. Yet, this strategic pivot is fraught with peril. International markets are notoriously volatile. Macau operates at the whim of potential crackdowns from the Chinese government. And the burgeoning hospitality market in Saudi Arabia remains largely an unproven experiment. Should these high-stakes international wagers fail to pay off and the well of domestic loyalty run dry, MGM could find itself dangerously isolated. To put it another way, in their obsessive hunt for whales, they are risking the complete alienation of the foundational base that made Las Vegas sustainable for decades. So when the CEO appears to shrug off domestic dissatisfaction, understand that this isn't an oversight, it is the strategy. Las Vegas, in their corporate vision, is no longer a city for everyone. But what happens if everyday Americans simply stop coming altogether? Beneath the neon facade, what hollow shell of a city remains? A city dreaming of government bailouts. And it was at this moment the interview veered from merely shocking into the realm of the truly unbelievable. The bombshell came from Bill Hornbuckle, the CEO of MGM Resorts, who brazenly proposed that the United States government, meaning you, the taxpayer, should fund the marketing for American tourism. Let that revelation truly sink in. MGM, a corporate giant celebrating record-breaking quarterly profits, is now petitioning Washington to subsidize its own advertising budget. He argued, in his own words, that it was unsustainable for the U.S. to slash tourism funding from a staggering $100 million down to a mere $20 million. And his proposed solution? March back to Congress and demand more money. Consider the breathtaking hypocrisy here. On one hand, MGM is reporting soaring profits, fueled by its opulent properties and lucrative overseas ventures. Yet on the other, its chief executive laments that government marketing support is simply not enough. The question this raises is profound. Should ordinary taxpayers, many of whom can no longer even afford a trip to Las Vegas, be forced to subsidize the global advertising campaigns of these billion-dollar casino empires? For families grappling with skyrocketing grocery bills and crushing housing costs, this proposal isn't just tone-deaf, it's a slap in the face. While Hornbuckle attempted to frame this as an investment in America's travel industry, the unspoken truth was glaringly obvious. What MGM and its corporate allies truly desire is public funding to secure their private profits. The irony is almost excruciating, because Las Vegas once built its empire by luring customers with incredible value, forging a brand of loyalty that demanded zero taxpayer intervention. But now, after years of relentlessly squeezing every last dime from guests with exorbitant resort fees and outrageously priced meals, and 1,000 other nickel and dime tactics, these very same executives have the audacity to ask Uncle Sam to foot the bill to lure tourists back. This gamble poses a long-term risk that is as much about reputation as it is about finances. Because when corporations that cultivate an image of luxury and exclusivity turn around and beg for public handouts, they fatally undermine their own credibility. It forces tourists to ask a devastating question. If MGM needs taxpayer subsidies to market Las Vegas, perhaps the product itself is no longer compelling enough to stand on its own 2 feet. And what about the locals, already burdened with extra hotel taxes to fund behemoths like Allegiant Stadium? They are left to wonder why their pockets must be raided yet again, all to pad the balance sheets of corporate executives. This single moment was more than just an interview gaffe. It was a profound expose. It laid bare an entire corporate mindset. A mindset where the CEO of one of Las Vegas's most dominant corporations no longer views tourism as a shared experience, one founded on trust and mutual value. Instead, he sees it as a mere commodity, something to be artificially propped up with government cash the moment customers begin to lose interest. This revelation forces us to confront the next urgent question. If the Canadian and international visitors don't come back, will corporate Las Vegas even notice? This brings us to the tragic story of the Canadian tourist, from VIPs to absolute afterthoughts. For decades, Canadians were the very lifeblood of Las Vegas tourism. They were the faithful pilgrims escaping harsh winters, the ones filling hotel rooms during the sweltering summer months, effectively transforming the Strip into their home away from home. Entire marketing empires were once built to target this snowbird crowd, dangling the irresistible promises of cheap buffets and affordable rooms, all just a short flight away. But then came the CNBC interview. And in it, Bill Hornbuckle revealed just how catastrophically that relationship has deteriorated. He openly admitted that Canadian visitation has plummeted by a staggering 40%. And yet, he dismissed this collapse, casually noting that Canadians only constitute 3% of our mix. On the surface, it might sound like an insignificant figure, but beneath it lies a chillingly dismissive attitude. The shocking truth is that Canadian tourists, once courted as VIPs, are now being written off as completely expendable, For Las Vegas, this is a profoundly dangerous miscalculation. Because the value of Canada was never just about the numbers, it was about unwavering loyalty. These were visitors who returned year after year, generation after generation, bringing their extended families and acting as powerful word-of-mouth ambassadors back home. To lose them isn't just a 3% dip on a spreadsheet. It is the catastrophic erosion of a reliable, long-term customer base. People who saw Las Vegas as an integral part of their lifestyle. And the reasons for this precipitous decline are painfully clear. The skyrocketing costs in Las Vegas are colliding head-on with a weakened Canadian dollar. A perfect storm that makes every single purchase feel excruciatingly painful for anyone north of the border. A $90 hotel room, once fees are added, balloons to nearly 125 Canadian dollars. Now factor in the exorbitant meals and surging airfare, and show tickets that routinely start in the hundreds. And suddenly a weekend getaway to Vegas carries the same price tag as a European vacation. And for Canadian tourists, who are renowned for their financial practicality, the choice becomes obvious. They are opting for better value alternatives. They're flocking to Mexico's all-inclusive resorts, the Caribbean, or even exploring stunning domestic destinations like Banff and Niagara Falls. But what truly elevates Hornbuckle's dismissal to a masterclass in corporate disregard is its sheer tone deafness. A public declaration of, "We don't really need you," that detonates with a force far beyond his comprehension. From a Canadian perspective, this feels like a deliberate demotion from cherished partner to irrelevant afterthought. A slap in the face in an age where customer allegiance is currency. Those words don't just sting, they go viral, poisoning the well of public perception, revealing a consequence that is as much cultural as it is catastrophic to the bottom line. Las Vegas has always cultivated an image as the world's playground, a glittering intersection where Americans, Canadians, Europeans, and Asians converged under a shared neon sky. To so casually cast aside one of its most loyal demographics shatters that illusion and leaves a chilling question hanging in the desert air. If Canadians, once the bedrock of Vegas tourism, are now deemed expendable, whose turn is it next? This brings us to the great mirage of the event economy. When cornered on Las Vegas's recovery plan, Bill Hornbuckle clung to a single hollow buzzword: programming. He pointed to mega concerts, championship bouts, and NFL showdowns at Allegiant Stadium as the city's salvation. And on the surface, the logic seems impenetrable. Who, after all, could resist the allure of seeing Canelo dominate the ring or a legend like Paul McCartney command the stage? But once you strip away the veneer of spectacle, this so-called event economy reveals itself to be less of a sustainable solution and more of a shimmering, deceptive mirage. Here is the unvarnished truth. Admission to these marquee events doesn't just cost hundreds, it skyrockets into the thousands. Hornbuckle boasted of a 98% occupancy rate fueled by these spectacles. What he conveniently omitted, however, was the staggering barrier to entry. A single Paul McCartney ticket can demand $3,000, a figure that doesn't even touch airfare, exorbitant hotel fees, or food that can bleed a family of four of another $300 per day. The final calculation is not just brutal, it's an eviction notice. For the average middle-class visitor, the Vegas Dream is now an exclusive club, locked away behind velvet ropes and accessible only to those with platinum credit. Even more damning, constructing an entire economy on the foundation of these mega events invites a catastrophic level of volatility. While stadiums and arenas can guarantee packed rooms for a single weekend, a terrifying question emerges. What happens during the other 40 weeks of the year? The answer is a landscape of silent casino floors, desperate restaurants, and a workforce haunted by unpredictable hours. This profound over-reliance on sporadic, high-intensity demand paints a picture of robust recovery in quarterly reports, but it exposes a hollow, fragile reality on the ground. Then there is the psychological toll. Las Vegas once sold itself as the ultimate democratic escape, a place where anyone, regardless of their budget, could taste the high life. Now, that promise has been completely inverted. The new, unspoken message is that if you cannot afford $1,000 tickets, you are no longer part of the demographic Vegas is courting. This strategic shift is a cold alienation of the very people who built the city's legend. In place of a high-volume tourism model, executives are now placing a massive bet on a doctrine of exclusivity. A profoundly unstable gamble that threatens to implode if the international high rollers or blockbuster events fail to materialize as forecasted. The supreme irony is that these flashy events only amplify the perception of price gouging that is already crippling the city's reputation. Hotel rates surge to astronomical levels, resort fees multiply, and the local population seethes knowing their hotel taxes are subsidizing stadiums they will likely never afford to enter. The devastating result is a city desperately chasing prestige at the cost of its own credibility. So while programming may indeed fill hotel rooms on a handful of weekends, it does absolutely nothing to rebuild the fractured soul of Las Vegas. When the everyday tourist is priced out of participation, the Strip transforms into nothing more than a private gallery for the ultra-wealthy, which forces us toward one final, unavoidable reckoning. What becomes of a city when unchecked greed consumes the very spirit that once made it legendary? The long-term fallout is inevitable. Every great empire in history crumbled, not from an external threat at the gates, but from a terminal decay that begins within. Las Vegas is proving to be no exception. The iconic, glittering Strip, once a beacon of attainable fantasy, now sways precariously under the crushing weight of its own corporate avarice. From $12 cups of coffee to $3,000 concert tickets, the directive to the ordinary person is brutally clear. If you cannot afford the price of admission, this city is no longer meant for you. This is not merely a strategic pivot. It is a fundamental betrayal of the covenant that made Las Vegas a global phenomenon. The long-term consequence is as simple as it is devastating: the complete erosion of loyalty. For decades, the lifeblood of Vegas was the unwavering return of regular people. They built their traditions here. Bachelor parties, anniversaries, reunions, all because they knew they could stretch their hard-earned dollars and feel like royalty, if only for a weekend. Today, those same loyal families are running the numbers, and the inescapable conclusion is that the Strip is no longer worth the pilgrimage. Once that sacred trust is broken, it is virtually impossible to ever win it back. On an economic level, the entire model is fundamentally unsustainable. The allure of high rollers and mega events may keep the quarterly earnings reports looking glossy for now, yet they fail to provide the consistent year-round lifeblood upon which the city's survival hinges. International markets, from Macau to Saudi Arabia, are fundamentally volatile, utterly subject to the whims of politics and shifting regulations. The critical miscalculation is this: if Vegas alienates its domestic core in the chase for foreign whales, it gambles with its own identity, risking a descent into a hollow brand, profitable for a moment, but dangerously brittle when the winds of fortune inevitably shift. Socially, the fracture is already starkly visible. Locals actively avoid the Strip, disillusioned by soaring costs and a decaying quality of life. The city's workforce faces a precarious existence of unstable hours as tourism dwindles outside of major event weekends, and the small off-strip businesses that once thrived on the overflow of the masses now find themselves locked in a desperate battle for survival. A city that built its mythos on being for everyone is now starkly revealed as an enclave for the privileged few. Culturally, however, the cost is even more catastrophic. Las Vegas was always more than just its casinos. It was an idea, a potent promise that dreams, however fleeting, were within grasp. That foundational mythology is now fading into memory, replaced by a pervasive, corrosive cynicism. Visitors no longer boast about the deals they found. They now issue stark warnings to friends about being systematically gouged. If this insatiable greed continues to erode the very concept of value, Vegas may still cast a brilliant glow across the desert, but its soul will have been extinguished. The neon will burn on, but the very magic that forged the legend could be lost forever. The undeniable truth is that Las Vegas was erected on a foundation of value, but today it operates on an engine of pure greed. From insidious hidden fees to the absurdly priced cup of coffee, the city risks severing ties with the very visitors who breathed life into it. The Strip may continue to glitter with a blinding light, but in the absence of trust, its enchantment evaporates into thin air. The ultimate question remains, would you still wager your money and, more importantly, your loyalty